You're listening to Excellence Above Talent, a podcast where we have the hard conversations about the lives of men and what leads us to achieve greatness and suffer defeat. Hear from other men's journeys as well, as we all learn and grow together to become inspirations to ourselves and those around us. And now your host, Aaron Thomas.
What's up, my beautiful people? Aaron Thomas with Excellence Above Talent. I am here with Bryn, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Aaron, thanks for having me. My name's Bryn, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Odessa at Agape Counseling Services.
So, been in Odessa all your life?
I'm born and raised, moved away a couple times, but always ended up back here.
What do you think is like the pull that kept you back to?
Man, family.
Family?
My parents are here, yeah. So moved away for college, moved away for a relationship, but ended back here to be a family. Family. Kind
of what Odessa does. If you got family here, Odessa's a good place to go.
Yes, absolutely.
So I believe humans were created to help each other out. What story or message do you have that could help the next generation, young people?
Well, in 2020, my family and I had a huge tragedy that happened in our life that basically shifted our whole world and the outlook that we have on life. And I've been sharing my story quite often, especially with youth and parents. And I'm so glad that you've asked me to kind of share today. So I'll just tell you a little bit. On September 19th of 2020, my day started out as a normal Saturday, and about 10 o'clock that morning, I had 4 officers on my doorstep telling me that they thought that my son had been in a car accident that morning, early hours, and they thought he was deceased. Later on that day, I did find out that he was in a car accident, and he was killed on impact. 2 other boys died in the car wreck with him, 2 19-year-olds, and he was 18 at the time. We would later find out that alcohol was involved. Also, several choices made that night that I like to tell people about. Evan didn't come home that night. He had a curfew of 1:30, and he made the choice not to come home and went to a couple parties with some friends and got in a car with somebody he wasn't real familiar with, but he knew, and had a friend with him, and they took off from a party and drove north on Clover, and it was about 2:55 a.m., and they ran the stop sign. I don't know why they ran the stop sign. I'll never know. But they ran a stop sign and they collided with another car driving on 52nd. That car was going over 80 miles an hour at a 99 acceleration rate, which means the impact was pretty severe. Evan was killed on impact. The driver of the truck was killed along with him on impact, and the driver of the other car, who was 19, he died a little bit later at the hospital. So we lost 3 boys that night. We would come to find out that the 2 boys in the other car were highly intoxicated, and they had been out at parties that night too. So lots of poor choices that night on everybody involved, my son included. And those choices have led me to where I am today. My world has just been rocked, and I've had to pick up the pieces from that night.
So how do you, when you have those days where you don't want to get up and it's just tough and there's just a lot of, I guess you're thinking in negative ways and, you're just in a bad headspace, how do you get up and keep moving?
Well, especially, with grief's complicated and it's messy, and something that I've learned personally in all of this is that, it's like waves. Some weeks I do fairly well and I can function and I've got motivation and I'm on top of it. And then there's some days and weeks that I'm not on my game. I have no cognitive skills. I don't feel good. I just want to cry. Nothing motivates me. I can't find joy in things. And, God's a big piece of that, but also remembering that there's purpose here. There's purpose. And when I tell my son's story all the time, I talk about God gives each of us a gift. I truly believe it. He gives all of us gifts that we are to use in this world to make it a better place. He gave my son the gift to take care of others and make them laugh and make them feel good no matter what was going on. And that was his skill. I believe that he's given me strength. I'd like to talk to him about it. I didn't want to get it this way, but I do believe that God's given me strength. And don't think we need to waste our gifts. And so I really challenge myself on those hard days to think about the strength that I've been given to get through this, and the purpose that there has to be out of all of this to keep pushing forward. I love my job. As a counselor, I get to work with teenagers and adults, and I get to be there for them and support them and teach them skills and help them walk really challenging paths. And after I lost my son, I didn't think I was going to be able to do that anymore.
Yeah.
How could you help somebody when you're so broken? And over the last 33 months, I have really saw how strong I am and how God is in my life. And he's opening doors for me now that I know that this tragedy, there was purpose in it.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, there's purpose in this. And so that strength is driving me, and I'm going to keep pushing. That's all you can do.
So you said something, you said you were broken, but I believe broken people help people. Because if you're not broken, how can you really understand and help, someone who might be going down a different path or might be doing something that, you see and know, hey, I've been here before, and you need to, switch it up and make better decisions.
Yeah.
When did you start going to talk to the kids about, your son's story and about making better choices and decisions in their life? When did that happen?
So within about 6 months after losing him, I started getting some calls from local Crime Stoppers and individuals in the community. And I think it was December of 2021. So right after his 1 year angelversary, I went and spoke for the first time up at the hospital, and we started our teen driving class. We call it the Key Driving Class through Medical Center and Teen Court. It was the first time I had stood up there and told that story, and man, it was hard. It was hard. And over time kind of tailored the story about decisions and choices, and actually was invited for the state conference for Crime Stoppers to tell my story to about 300 teenagers from all over Texas. And so it all started that way. And then we've been hitting schools hard recently. We've been able to hit Permian and OHS and talk to the senior classes this year. We're doing our driving class up at the hospital, and we're trying to get out there. But pretty quickly after, people were trying to get me to do things. And I'm not sure I was ready that first year, but that second year, I really pushed myself. I had somebody tell me once, you talked about broken. Mm-hmm. Right after Evan died, I was serving on 3 different boards. I served on the hospital board. I'm an elected position, and I was serving on 2 other nonprofit boards. And was trying to figure out, what do I do with myself? Because I couldn't function those first 3 months. I couldn't work. I couldn't see clients. I couldn't do anything. And I had somebody that told me that I should step down from those boards because you're broken, and how can you do anything for others? They made that comment to me, and that I believed it for a while. I even resigned from those boards, except for the hospital board. And so that statement was very powerful to me. And over some time and the help with another pastor, I realized that wasn't true. That was absolutely not true. We're all broken in some way, shape, or form.
Everybody is broken.
Every one of us. And man, I think of a broken heart, and I think of the light that shines out through it.
That's good.
And I want to be that light,
And it also takes courage to be broken and still tell your story. Like, no one really understands the courage it takes to not only feel, what you have felt, but also, I'm assuming every time you tell that story, there's some level of feeling that you still have, the loss, the hurt, the why, but you still get up and you still do it. So the amount of courage that it takes is bar none. No one can ever question the courage that people have, the courage that you have to just get up and want to tell that story. Because the story, again, it's needed. I think God puts us in places and allows things to happen to us, not for us to go within and kind of keep it and be mad at him, but just to find ways to help this next generation, not hold on to, the information that could potentially change one person's life. So at the end of the day, like, if you can change one person's life, that trajectory, they're able to change, that next family and that next family. Like, you have, touched and inspired a generation, 10 years or 5 generations down the line, just because of the story that you had, the courage that you have and the story that you told to help these kids out. So I think that is pretty awesome.
I think that a lot of people don't realize that, if we stand in front of a group of people and we touch one person in the room.
Yeah.
Or if we wake up every morning and have the goal of bringing light to one person by just smiling at them, being kind, we're making a huge difference. We don't have to change a whole room. We don't have to have all the magical powers, but just one person. And when I talk to a group of teenagers or I stand in front of a room, that's one. Yeah. My goal is one. Yeah. If I do more, then that's amazing, but one, because that one matters. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you were talking about, this podcast was created through a buddy of mine from the Army committing suicide. We had a conversation the day before, or 2 weeks before. We were talking. He was having issues. I told him to come down here to, get in the oil field, and we can help him, figure it out. And then 2 weeks later, he was gone, and it hurt me because I had talked to him previously, and I didn't hear it, or my life was so busy that I was just like, hey, I'll give you money and come down here, but I didn't stop to listen to what he had to say. And so for a while that really bothered me. But then I started to ask the question of, do men have places to go and talk to? Do young boys have places to go and talk to, or people to talk to about, the issues and the struggle? And so I hear in your story that there were a group of young men that lost their lives from decisions of partying and, not coming home. Do you think that, as a young boy, as far as raising a young man, do you think he had, not issues, but do you think he had trouble expressing his feelings and emotions as to what was going on in his life?
My son?
Mm-hmm.
No, Aaron, he was actually really outgoing and
Gotcha.
Was a really positive person.
Gotcha.
I can't speak for the boys that he was with, but Evan was a really good kid, never got in trouble, was liked by all, very positive. After he passed, we heard so many stories about who he was and just the good kid he was. He got in trouble some for being late for curfew. I ended up finding out it was because he was driving other kids home because he didn't want them to get in trouble, or I'd get on to him because he didn't have money. Well, it's because he lent it to his friend and never asked for it back. That was the kind of kid he was. He was also the kid that would have stayed out to be with friends because he was a social butterfly and he loved life. He loved it to the fullest. And he lived his best life that day before. He went and did all kinds of fun stuff with his friends. And he was bright, He just made a stupid decision and didn't come home that night. He'd only done that one other time. And we had talked about it, and I told him, I said, if you're going to stay with your friends, you got to tell me. He was 18, and we were trying to give him space. I was trying to navigate being his mom and him still sort of being a teenager and immature at 18 and not developed fully. And, and I know what decisions can do, but at 18, we're all invincible, right? Sure. Especially boys.
Yeah, especially boys.
Especially boys. You think that you're going to go out to...
Where do you think that comes from, though? Why, is this innate in us, or why do you think young boys just think at 18 nothing could hurt them?
I don't know. I just think they're invincible.
Gotcha.
Unless something tragic has already happened to them, that's something that we can't even perceive at that point.
For sure.
And what's priority? It's social life. It's meeting the girl.
Yeah, for sure.
Those kind of things. It's social life, and so that's their priority at that time. And I do think development has a lot to do with that age group that we, when he made the decision not to come home or they made the decision to go to a party and drink, they never anticipated that would have happened. They wouldn't have done it if so. They didn't sign up for it that night. They just thought they were going to go and hang with friends. And how many of us have made a decision that probably could have changed our life forever, but we just got lucky. And they didn't that night, So I do think it's development a lot. And that's why I tell this story about decisions and choices, because when you're young, you don't think of it that way. You don't think that I didn't go home that night and I'm going to go and hang out with friends would change the trajectory of everybody's life and end his. You just don't.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what motivates you to keep pushing after dealing with heartbreak?
My girls. I've got 2 girls. And Evan, my son, being able to tell his story and keeping his name alive is very important to me because I really want to save a life, at least one. If I can save at least one life and especially a kid's life and keep other parents from having to go through the heartbreak and the grief that I have, I would spare everyone from this. It's absolutely unbearable to go through. And again, I really believe that God gives us that gift, and our world's not a good place. Yeah. We need to use these gifts that God gives us and make the best out of this world and make it a better place.
And when you say our world's not a good place, I think that is one of the main reasons why it's not a good place. Everyone is afraid to use their gifts that is given to them. And I'm not sure is it just because of society or not wanting to be left out or but there's a lot of, I see it now with kids, with adults that they try to sit back and just allow everything to happen for them and not go out there and just kind of live within the means of what God has placed upon them. So
right. And I think like a level of confidence and some people not even realizing that they've got those gifts.
Gotcha.
Maybe they don't even realize that, that is special and that they can do something with that. In their eyes, it might not be anything. But again, if we wake up and have that goal to make a difference in just one life that day, we're using a gift and we'll learn what it is because we all have them. Absolutely. All of us do.
I am a big believer in that. What is the best advice you have received?
So it's kind of funny how I received this. My son's favorite rapper is Juice WRLD. That's great because all the teenagers now know Juice WRLD, and he was very popular. And I liked his music. My son was very much into music and dancing, so he shared with me music all the time that was coming up and big. And it's something that we always did together, listening to music and stuff. And right after he died, I learned about Juice WRLD's 999. And I thought about this for a while afterwards, and it just resonated with me. And it's actually something, a lot of people have tried to give me advice over the last 33 months, but until you sit in the seat, it's really hard to hear other, to give advice to somebody unless you've been sitting in this chair and lost a child. But, so Juice WRLD's quote about 999 is that 999 represents taking whatever hell, whatever situation, or whatever struggle you're going through and turning it into something positive and using it to push yourself forward. So we use 999 all the time to find motivation, and I say push yourself forward all the time. I wear a bracelet that says live like Evan, and it says push yourself forward. I've been handed this new life. I always tell people I see my life on a timeline before and after, and this after is hard, but I've got to find purpose in this tragedy, and I got to use it to push myself forward. That's the motivator. And that quote from Juice WRLD, man, that's been big for my family and for his friends. And I feel like he kind of left it for me. Yeah. It's weird how I got that, but I feel like Evan left that for me, and I needed it from him. Something I've learned through all this, and I tell everyone this, is buy the ticket. Before Evan died, I had gotten him and his his younger sister, but the oldest of them. He was very close to her. I got them Post Malone concert tickets. Again, love music. And I nearly bought myself one to go with them. And I thought, no, I don't have the money. I don't need to spend the money on it. But I spent the money on them. I took them to the concert and they went in and I didn't. I regret it all the time because it was, $300 or $400 could have been made again, and I could have been there with Evan at that concert. So I tell everybody to buy the ticket, take the trip, take the picture, take the video, do whatever you need to do. The money will always be there. The time will not, and the people will not. So buy the ticket.
You have talked about purpose multiple times on this podcast. Why do you think that is important? knowing your purpose, figuring out your purpose? Like, why is that important?
It's important because if we don't identify that, or if we don't have purpose, then what are we going to do? We don't have much motivation behind that. And especially if you've had a hard life, if you've had some tragedy or hard things happening to you, without that purpose, you don't have a lot of motivation, and we've got to find it. Purpose is what drives us. And we all have it. We're all here for a reason. Every one of us has something to contribute. It's important.
That's awesome. So, last question. What impact do you want to leave Ms. Earth and Odessa on this community?
Well, just, I think leaving this world in a better place than what I found it is a huge goal for me. And I think that I can do that by being there for others, inspiring others, modeling positivity and kindness, and also just, telling my story and my son's story and being very vulnerable about my grief and about this tragedy, because a lot of people don't know how to walk grief. They don't know how to walk through it. They don't know how to handle mental health issues. They don't know how to do that. And if me being vulnerable and being honest about what I go through and how I feel, and it helps somebody navigate it in a healthy way, then I'm leaving the world in a better place, because I think there's such a stigma in that we have to get over things and we're just supposed to be okay. And we don't just get over things, and we don't have to just be okay. There's a way to get through it in a healthy way, and sometimes it's messy, but you can do it, and it's okay for you to go through it that way. So
I know I said last question, but you talked about grief.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with it, and how are you dealing with it now? The grief of a loved one dying.
Yeah, grief's messy, so everybody handles it differently. I think the worst thing you can do is avoid. I meet so many people that avoid, and it ends up coming back to get you. But the way that I've handled it is I've embraced it, and I have leaned into it. And as soon as I lost him, I knew I was going to need help. I'm a counselor, and I thought I knew everything about grief, and I don't. I didn't know anything about it until I went through it. And so leaning into it, I got a counselor immediately. I found a support group locally, a child loss group, so they understand what I go through. The counselor has really helped validate, my feelings and given me permission to feel what I need to. I've kept everything the way that I want it to be at the house for him. I started new traditions and kept old ones to honor him. My grief looks different than my girl's grief and my husband's grief. And that's the challenging part, I think, in grief, is learning how to respect everyone's grief around you too, because everyone grieves differently. And what we need is different than somebody else in our household. And that's a big challenge after you lose someone. So just, again, embracing it and moving through it and finding the courage to talk about it makes a huge difference. If we don't talk about our grief and what we're feeling and experiencing, I don't think we start the healing process. So telling his story has really helped with my healing process, and finding this purpose and keeping myself motivated to keep working as a counselor has helped heal as well.
So you said something about people avoiding grief. What are ways that people try to?
I've people might take pictures down and not look at them anymore. Get rid of all belongings and again, not talk about what happened at all. Some people go right back to work and move on and dismiss the feelings and push through it, versus embracing it and actually leaning into it and acknowledging that it's there. Something that I've learned is that grief is always going to be there. How could it not be? It's love. It's now replaced that love that we had for that loved one, and it doesn't get smaller and it doesn't get better. What we do is we learn to grow with it, and we learn to accommodate with and to accommodate to the grief, and we make space for it. I mean, I make space for it. When I know that my season's coming up in September, I plan. I take a week off during that angelversary time. At Christmas, around Christmas, that's hard, and his birthday, I take time off. I make space for it. I acknowledge that it's going to be there. I embrace it. I allow it. I give it permission to be there. And again, I think that remembering that that's love is important, that it's okay for you to feel that love still.
Where did you find the awareness to start taking like a week off in September or taking days off in December? Like, what happened in your life to where you realized like, okay, I need to be more aware of how I'm feeling and make choices and make decisions that's going to help me, not put me in such a negative state.
Right. I think, unfortunately, it's a little trial and error.
For sure.
That first year after you lose someone, you kind of start navigating the holidays a little bit. You realize what's going to be challenging and what's not. And I think immediately then you can start planning for the next time. Unfortunately, again, it's trial and error. We don't know what something's going to feel like or what that experience is going to be like till we encounter it that first time. Those firsts are hard. But after you've done that, I think that you go ahead and start making that space and that plan. That is really important that we do that. It's self-care. It's taking care of ourselves. It's giving ourselves permission to be however we need to be to get through that hard moment.
Is there a nonprofit or something here in this community that that you're a part of or that you're trying to create that people could know more about or should know more about?
Well, I work for Agape Counseling Services. We're a nonprofit. We are faith-based. We take insurance, but we also have a scholarship program. And the beauty of the nonprofit is that we want everyone to get help. And so we raise money to provide services to anyone. We work with 13 and up, and it's a great organization. Centers for Children and Families, another local nonprofit that does amazing things in this community counseling-wise. For teenagers or parents that want their teenagers to be involved in something related to these decisions and choices, and especially if it's in the driving class up at Medical Center that we're doing, the key driving class is phenomenal. It's a day where they get a tour at the hospital. We're talking about lots of different types of incidents that can happen when you're driving, and we end it with impaired driving. It's a powerful class that Medical Center and Teen Courts put on, and it's wonderful.
And is that through Medical Center and Teen Court? Like how would someone get that information?
Rebecca Grissom at Teen Court would be the contact. But yes, it is held at Medical Center in our boardroom, and we try to do it every other month. Okay. Again, we're trying to get out to the schools and teach some of this too, but there's also a child loss support group local that, it's not a nonprofit. It's just a bunch of parents that we've got a Facebook page. It would be a great support to anybody that's lost a child. Doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter how you lost them, but being in the presence with others that understand you, there's something powerful about that. So you're not alone. And I think anytime that you're struggling and finding a support group or finding a group of people that can connect with you and understand what you're feeling, there's nothing better than that when you're having a hard time.
Well, I really do appreciate you, because I reached out to you on Monday. I saw a post, I think Monday, and I reached out to you on Monday, and you were very open to having a conversation with me, so I appreciate that. For allowing me to come and have this conversation with you. So if anyone hasn't told you today that they love you, let me be the first to say I love you. You're awesome. You're an amazing person. You deserve the best that this world has to offer. Do not give up. Do not quit. The world does not get easier.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And for daily, motivational, and up-to-date content, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Excellence Above Talent. And remember, keep moving forward, never give up, and you are never alone in this battle. We'll see you next time.